Hi guys, today I just wanted to talk about people that are just, starting out in comics. If you're a person who's, hey, I've really enjoyed the movies or, friends of yours are really into comics and you wanted to start out, how would I go about doing that? So I have a couple tips today and you can go through these. Obviously you could ask me some more additional questions in the comments below and there's, tons and tons of videos online, blogs, etc. But I think the number one thing you need to do is really just pick a couple characters that you like. For me, currently it's Venom, Thor, Silver Surfer is a huge character, favorite of mine. X-Men, I like reading the X-Men, and recently they were rebooted, so that's been kind of fun. But just pick a character and just dive right in. I guess number two would be, where do you buy them? So I mean, in most obviously large cities in the country, I'm talking about United States, obviously you might be in another country, there's going to be local comic book stores, and they're great. You go in there, generally, I mean, I've never met an owner of a LCS that's not excited about comics and really wanting to invite new people to help you out. So that's, go there, just introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm interested in this character, or do you guys have any suggestions? And just start buying comics, week by week or month by month, whatever it is. If you're, not able to get to an LCS because of your work or whatever, definitely there's a lot of places online. And I'll put some links down below, but there's, tons and tons of websites that provide, you can order any comic that you ever wanted. At least currently that are coming out, and then a lot of backward ones too. A lot of people ask me as a third thing, where do I start from a reading perspective? And you could literally just buy one and just start reading. You might be a little lost because you might be in the middle of an arc, but you'd catch on. Another route to go, there are a number of apps you could buy. So Marvel has their Marvel Unlimited, and there's Comixology, and those are good ones where you could buy particular back issues, either in trade or Marvel Unlimited. You just get basically almost all the back orders. So you could say, I want to go back and read, the original Silver Surfers or whatever it might be. And that's a great way to start, honestly. I think it's $10 a month. So if you wanted to get really crazy, you could pay for 1 month and read as much as you wanted. I have a subscription to Marvel Unlimited just because I do want to go back and read different things. And it could be expensive if I want to go back and buy an entire run, especially if something long ago. Even if you buy in trade, it could be a little bit spendy, so that's worth it for me. You're going to be buying these comics most of the time. When you buy them at a local comic shop, they're going to give them to you what's called raw. So you're just going to have the comic. And you do want, since you're quote unquote collecting comics, to protect them. So you're going to want to buy some bags and boards. Comics throughout the years have gotten smaller, honestly. So the Golden Age comics, which were the ones long ago, versus the Silver Age, versus the current ones, are smaller for a variety of reasons, mainly probably to save some money. But since you'll be most likely buying the modern ones, and you're in an LCS where you can go online, you just go buy some bags that are current or modern size and some boards that are current or modern size. And you want to buy them in bulk. So, buy 50 bags, 50 boards. You can buy them in a variety of different places. Once again, I'll link some stuff below. And that way you have them. And so after you read your comic, you can put it in your bag and board. And of course, the next thing you're going to want to have is a box. So there are what are called short boxes, which are a little bit smaller, but they can fit hundreds of comics. Or a long box, which I don't get, but those, I don't even know how many hundreds and hundreds of comics can fit in a long box. But you'll want to get at least one short box so you can put your bagged and boarded comics into the box and store it away. Speaking, you don't want to store your comics anywhere too hot or too cold, and obviously you don't want it to be super, super humid. So if you want to get super crazy, for example, I do have I think with like 10 or 20 bucks or something like that, I have this little dial thing I bought that shows me the humidity in the room that I have all my comics. I think you want to keep it under 50%. And then since I have them in my basement, I have a finished basement, then I know that the temperature is going to be within a reasonable range, because humans can be down there. It can't be too hot, it can't be too cold. And then I monitor the humidity. Throw your box somewhere, and away you go. As you get more and more into it, obviously you're probably going to want to display your comics. You might get into grading your comics, but I think when you're just starting out, to get a couple comics, find out what you like, because things that you think you might like, you may not. So in other words, you're like, I love Venom, I'm going to read Venom, but you might read a couple and say, I don't really like that. You might find some covers that you really like. You might find an artist that you start, really enjoying their work, and so you want to collect their comics. There's really no wrong way to do it all. I mean, if you wanted to read every comic backwards, you could do that. I mean, you can really do it any way you want. If you just want to collect covers and not read the comics, that's okay too. I mean, this is kind of, each person does their own thing. If you really like modern stuff, maybe you're like, I don't like any of the modern stuff. I want to go back and I'm only going to collect, X-Men from the 80s or the 70s, etc. I want to collect only ones that have black covers, red covers. People do all that. So it's really picking out what you like. And when you're just starting, it's a weird, like, you don't really know what you like. Even I'm finding things that I think I like, but now I didn't like. So for example, one of the things that you can do is you can grade books. And when you grade them, they get put in this plastic case. It's called slabbing it. And I went through a period where I really wanted a lot of my comics slabbed. And then I went through a period where I didn't like any slab comics. And now I'm in a period where I'm liking slab comics more. So it's just really kind of figuring out what you like, and it's an evolution, and it's definitely a longer term hobby, but it's a lot of fun. One of the things that does confuse people is the different covers. So right now, mainly because the comic book companies want to sell more copies, they'll come out with an issue. So let's just pick one. For example, like, Thor 5. Thor 5 comes out, and they'll have what's called the cover A, which is the main cover, and they may have what are mini variants. So what that means is they have different covers done by different artists. So if you're a collector, you might be like, oh, I really like cover A, but oh, whoa, this cover B is a really cool cover too. So you're actually buying two of the same comic, but there's a different cover. That happens a lot. I actually will often buy the cover A and the cover B because I'm a collector, but also because I might like the cover B. And then for the big comics, so for example, if it's a milestone or if it's a first edition of one, they may come out with mini variants. So for example, they might have, cover A, cover B, cover C, cover D of different artists. And then they also do incentive variants, which means that if the comic store buys 25 copies, they get one of these special comics with a different cover. So it might be 1 for 25. In other words, they have to buy 25 to get this cover, or 1 for 50, or sometimes 1 for 100. So what happens is those covers that are 1 for 100 tend to be very rare. And if you go ahead and want to sell your comics eventually, those would sell for would sell for more money. I wanted to interject and add this in here because it used to confuse me a lot, which is, does the cover art always relate to what's going on in that particular comic? And the answer is no. You see all kinds of crazy things going on. So in other words, the story might be about Thor, killing a dragon, and on the cover is, Thor might not even be on the cover. Or vice versa. There's Thor killing a dragon on the cover, and in the comic, he might be off fighting Loki or something like that. So that used to confuse me, but it's just kind of how they do it. So really, when you're looking at a cover, it's you got to look for the art, and sometimes people will buy it just for the art. Other times they know that there's something significant in the particular comic book, but the cover may or may not have anything to do with that. You don't need to buy all of them. I mean, it's kind of an obvious statement, but sometimes people, I think, feel a little bit like they might want to buy them all. But I often will buy a cover A, and if I really like one of the other covers, I'll buy it. But many times, because they do often charge more, a store might charge more, or if you go and buy books on eBay or other online comic stores, they'll charge more. So you could find a 1 in 50 might be $30 or $40, or 1 in 100 might be $50 or $100 for one comic. So you really want to enjoy and really love that cover, or somehow think that it's going to go up in value if you're going to spend that much money on a cover. Another thing that you probably are going to want to do, comics generally come out on Wednesdays, but DC comics come out on Tuesdays every week. So if you're working, if you can't get to the comic store, sometimes comics get really hot and they'll sell out. You'll want to talk to your comic store, or if you're buying from a specific website online, you can say, I want you to, hold one for me. So if you're buying Thor, they would pre-order it for you and make sure they have it for you. So it doesn't, even if it sells out, they would have one. So you want to give them notice of about 2 weeks before you would buy a particular comic. But if you're just gonna continuously get one, it's called putting that comic on a pull list. So you'd say, could you please put Thor and Venom and Silver Surfer, whatever it might be, on my pull list, and then they'll just pull them anytime a comic comes out. So that's how most people do it. And the significance is, if you do that, generally speaking, most local comic book stores will give you a discount, 10, 20%, something like that. So it's really good for them because they know that they're going to be selling these copies, and good for you because, you could come in, they might hold them for a week or 2 weeks. So you might have a bunch of comics when you stop in, they've already pulled them all and put them in a separate area for you. And so when you walk in, they'll give them to you. The last thing I wanted to talk about was, kind of more the investment element, which, depending on how and when you get into comics, that's an interesting piece, and people ask me about it all the time. And that's, I want to get into comics to make a bunch of money, which probably isn't going to happen. Inadvertently, it does happen if you collect comics over time. It's probably questionable about how much money you're making, but they could be worth something. And that's a really, I don't want to say difficult, but more of that type of speculation takes a lot of experience from my perspective. And I'm going to do a separate video, I think, on that. If you have specific questions, definitely put them down below. But I think when you're just starting out, you want to try to find characters in comics that you're really interested in, artists that you really enjoy, and just start collecting. And as even over a month or 2 or 4 or 5 or 6 months time, you'll start to get a feel for perhaps, hey, this artist and this story seem to really be hot right now. And if I were to buy these, I think I might be able to sell them later. You'll get a feel for that. And that's part of the fun, is learning that for yourself. Also, there's a ton of YouTube channels and blogs, etc., that talk about it. And it's speculating on movies and video games and other things, and how they might drive the cost of a particular comic up. Anyway, thanks for listening. I think I'm gonna do a series of these videos. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this one, like and subscribe. Otherwise, have a great day.